All right, let's dive into one of the most, well, frankly, astonishing and terrifying chapters in all of human history, the Mongol conquests. I mean, how on earth did a group of nomads build the largest land empire the world has ever seen? Let's break it down.
Okay, so to really get your head around the Mongols, you've got to start with the sheer scale of what they pulled off. I mean, just look at this. We're talking about the largest contiguous land empire in history. It stretched all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the very heart of Europe. And get this wasn't some seafaring empire built on ships and sails. Nope, this entire thing was built, conquered, and ruled from the back of a horse.
And that right there, that's the central puzzle, isn't it? How did a, let's be honest, relatively small group of nomadic tribes from the huge, open grasslands of the Asian steppe manage to conquer the most powerful civilizations of their day? It sounds almost impossible. And that's the incredible story we're digging into.
So, to figure out how they did it, we have to start with their power source. And it was unlike anything any other empire had. You could almost call them the world's first solar-powered conquerors. Yeah, you heard that right.
Just think about the logistics for a second. European powers, they ran on wind. Wind filled their sails, took them across oceans. The Mongols, though, they ran on grass. Their entire war machine, from the cavalry they rode to the cattle that fed their armies, was fueled by the solar energy locked inside the grass of the steppe. Now, this had a huge implication, right? It meant their conquests were seasonal. They were literally tied to the growing season of grass. It was a totally different way of projecting power across the world.
So what was the spark that lit this incredible fire? What kicked it all off? Well, it turns out it was a perfect storm, really. A perfect storm of politics and, you won't believe it, climate that came together to forge the Mongol horde.
You had two critical things happen at almost the exact same time. First, in 1206, you've got this brilliant, absolutely ruthless leader named Temujin. He manages to unify all these warring tribes on the steppe and gets a new title, Genghis Khan. But then, something happens that nobody could control: the weather. Seriously. Starting around 1211, the whole region gets hit with 15 years of unusually warm, wet weather. What does that mean? A massive boom in grasslands. And more grass means more horses. A lot more horses. And that was the engine of their army. It was this perfect, almost unbelievable alignment of politics and climate.
But, having a unified people and a massive cavalry, that's not enough on its own. You need a strategy, a way to actually use that power. And what the Mongols developed was a playbook for conquest that was just devastatingly effective.
Their whole strategy was a masterclass in ruthless efficiency. First up, divide and conquer, a classic. When they faced the allied Alans and Cumans, they basically went to the Cumans and said, "Hey, we're both steppe people, right? Why are you helping them?" So the Cumans backed off, the Mongols crushed the Alans, and then they turned right around and crushed the Cumans. Genius and brutal. Second, they absorbed talent. They were masters at this. Defeated soldiers were often just folded right into their own armies. They brought 1,000 squads of Chinese siege engineers with them to take down walled cities in the Middle East. And third, and maybe most important, psychological warfare. They deliberately built a reputation for absolute terror so that the next city would hear the horror stories and just surrender without a fight.
And don't think their strategy was just about raiding and leaving. Not at all. To actually hold on to their conquests, they installed this whole system of imperial governors. They were called the Darugachi. These guys were the officials who would stay behind, administer the territory, collect the taxes, and keep everything in line long after the main army had rolled out. This was the institutional backbone that turned a bunch of conquests into a real, lasting empire.
But we really can't talk about all this Mongol success without confronting the absolutely brutal reality of their methods. So let's shift gears a bit and look at the unthinkable human cost of building this empire.
The numbers here, they're just hard to even comprehend. Historians estimate that the death toll from the Mongol conquests was somewhere between 20 and 60 million people. Let that sink in. This is, without a doubt, one of the single deadliest episodes in all of human history.
So, what was their policy for cities that dared to resist? Simple: systematic annihilation. And this wasn't just random, chaotic violence. No, it was calculated. It was policy. For example, after they conquered the city of Urgench in Central Asia, each Mongol warrior in an army of 20,000 was reportedly required to execute 24 civilians. 24 people each. It was a terrifyingly effective method designed to spread terror and make sure the next city just opened its gates.
If you want to understand what this actually looked like on the ground, just listen to this account.
It's from a papal envoy who passed through the city of Kiev a few years after the Mongols had sacked it. He wrote, and I quote, "We came across countless skulls and bones of dead men lying about on the ground. Kiev had been a very large and thickly populated town, but now it has been reduced almost to nothing." I mean, that's just chilling. That was the reality for anyone who stood in their way.
But here's the thing about an empire built entirely on conquest. It's incredibly difficult to sustain. So the final chapter of the Mongol story is one of fracture, of breaking apart. But it's also, surprisingly, a story of creation.
By the 1260s, a lot of internal conflicts started to bubble up, and the empire began to split. It didn't just disappear, though. It fractured into 4 massive successor states, or khanates. You had the Yuan dynasty in China, the Golden Horde over in Eastern Europe, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Chagatai Khanate right in Central Asia. And each of these would go on to shape the destiny of its region for centuries to come.
And here's what's so fascinating. All of this conquest actually forced new societies into existence. I mean, over in Eastern Europe, the Mongol ruling class started to merge with local Turkic peoples, and eventually this created the Tatars. In China, Kublai Khan didn't just rule over the Chinese, he created a whole Han army from soldiers who had defected from the north. So you see, the Mongols didn't just conquer, they absorbed, they integrated, and in doing so, they literally forged entirely new political and cultural identities.
So all of this leaves us with this profound paradox, right? Were the Mongols just unparalleled destroyers, or were they the ultimate connectors, the ones who, through brutal force, linked East and West like never ever before? The truth is, they were both. Their legacy isn't a simple story of destruction or creation. It's one of violent, world-altering transformation, and you can bet its echoes are still being felt today.